Welcome everyone to episode 50.5 of VR Roundtable. And I know what you're probably thinking, episode 50.5, what's going on here? Why do we have a midweek episode for VR Roundtable? And so basically there was some big news that hit the VR industry on Monday. And what's happened to us the last week was HTC Vive, of course, dropped their price to $599, and it happened like right after we did our show, like the next day. And so our news was like really old. And then a week later, we talked about the price drop. Well, the same thing happened this week. Now we have the announcement of these Microsoft mixed reality headsets. They're going to be compatible with SteamVR. Microsoft showed off a brand new trailer that showed some interesting things. There's just a lot of information that's coming out of this, and I think this is major news. Now, of course, we could wait for episode 51 and cover it then a week later, but we thought, you know what? This is kind of exciting. There's a lot of stuff going on. Why don't we discuss this a little bit? Why don't we talk about it a little bit? So we've put together a few topics that we're going to get into on this episode. And basically, we're mostly going to talk about these Microsoft mixed reality headsets and really not so much about them specifically, but more kind of about how does this affect the overall video game market? Because I personally believe that this is a disruptor to the entire video game market. I think this is going to be a major disruption, but I think it's a disruption in a very good way, because I think this is going to force everybody to get on their toes and compete at the highest possible level. So I'm going to go ahead and in this episode, I guess I'll just kind of ask some questions that I think are burning questions, and we'll go ahead and ask the panel that we have. We, of course, have Steve, Gary, and Chris that are joining me today. And so I'm going to start off with the first question I'm going to go with. Well, actually, let's go ahead and start with the SteamVR question. And I'll address this to Steve, because Steve, I remember there was an episode where you were telling me that you at the point that we thought it was, Microsoft was just going to use this, I forget what, the holographic whatever thing that they were going to use. And we thought that there would be no SteamVR, no connection to Oculus in any way. And so the Microsoft headsets were going to be relegated to whatever you could get off of the Windows Store rather than being able to connect it to SteamVR and all of that. And Steve, you kind of said, it's pretty much a non-starter. Well, now we find out SteamVR is there. In fact, Valve, like Joe Ludwig of Valve, had a quote about this. It's a partnership with Microsoft. So I'll kick it over to Steve first. What do you think, Steve, about this turn of events?
Yeah. Like you said, we, or at least I, was very perplexed when these dev kits, the Acer and the HP unit, went out, and the people that were receiving them, none of us received one, were saying, well, the only thing I can do is when I'm inside my dojo house thing, they call it, where you can dock all of the applications, each screen on the wall, place them wherever you want to, that the only things working with them are stuff from the Windows Store, which it didn't excite me very much, because I use literally nothing from the Windows Store. So I thought that was kind of lame. And I guess I always thought that it wouldn't always be that way. And I expected at some point that it would get Steam support, but I thought it would come much later. And so the big surprise for me is that we're getting this now. And I'm not sure of the timing. I don't know why they've said now is when we need to make this announcement, because they haven't been very clear on the headsets themselves. I don't know when I should be expected to go into the store, or a Microsoft store where I bought my Vive, by the way, when I'm expected to be able to go into one of those stores and see an HP unit, Acer unit, whatever, sitting on the shelves for purchase. So regardless, to keep it with the overall announcement and the idea of this is I think this does shake it up. I think this is pretty big news, and I am very excited to talk to you guys about it.
Yeah, speaking about when is this stuff going to come, there was a trailer that Microsoft released on Monday. I hope you guys had a chance to maybe check that trailer out, because at the end of the trailer, It did say that these headsets would be arriving with like the fall creators update for Windows. So I don't know exactly when that's arriving, like November-ish, December-ish, the fall creators episode, the fall creators.
You mean the update everybody puts off and no one wants? Like they did
Yeah.
last fall, like everyone's like, don't install it, don't install it.
But yeah, that's what it says at the end of the video. It's let me get exactly here, because hold on one second. Never mind. Well, it's the fall creators update.
It might be, yeah, it might be October, November time, because I know that the Dell headset that was also announced, or revealed, I should say, you know, we knew a Dell headset was coming, but that's coming out on the 17th of October. And it's, you know, it's priced pretty comparably to some of the other ones. We've got this Dell one that's coming out is $349, but there's also a bundle that they're doing with the controllers for $449. Anthony, correct me, I think they also announced, I don't believe they announced this before yesterday, but the Acer headset is coming with a bundle with these motion controllers as well for $399. Is that right? Did you see that?
Yeah, that actually was announced quite a while ago, that when they first announced the Microsoft controllers and they said they'd be $99 and they first showed the controllers with the lights and all that, that same day that they announced that, it was announced that Acer would have this package deal, $399.99. And speaking of this package deal, I mean, this kind of leads us into another one of the ramifications, the fallout that we're talking about. Right now, the Oculus Rift is $399.99, but we know that it is eventually going to go to $499. It's going to go up $100. So I'm going to send it over to Chris. Chris, when you think about this Acer package deal for $399 that will allow people to get into SteamVR, and there's a lot of content people are going to be able to get their hands on. Plus, they have controllers that are similar to touch in a lot of ways. Do you think this puts added pressure on Oculus to maybe continue with that $399 price? Because here is a major option for people out there. They don't have to worry about setting up cameras and stuff. There are some advantages. We don't know exactly how robust the tracking is yet, but Chris, what do you think this does to Oculus?
Yeah, it does put pressure on them to keep that price low, because they've had it low for so long. They might as well just keep it at this point. I mean, they always said they're gonna, you know, announce when they're gonna start lowering it, but that announcement hasn't came as of yet. So I really think they need to stay competitive, because right now I still think the Rift is the better option if you compare getting a Rift to getting an Acer unit, just because of the build quality is a little bit better. And one of the cons I see with all this mixed reality headsets is more on the multiplayer side of things in SteamVR. Like, think about a Rift person playing Rec Room, right? They have controllers, they can swing behind their heads, they can, I don't know, chuck basketballs, whatever you do in that app. But with these mixed reality headsets, the field of view of the controller tracking is the field of view of the headset, basically, maybe a few more degrees. It might even be like 180 degrees, depends on the cameras. But it'll just be so weird for multiplayer. Like, if you have your hand down at your shoulder, it won't track. So I'm a little bit nervous about that, knowing that this is joining the SteamVR ecosystem. You know,
that's the big point. I think it puts pressure on Oculus, not so much from our hardware perspective, but from a storefront perspective, because the hardware announcement is not something new. We've known that these headsets were coming, and Oculus has known that their headsets are coming. So really, this is more of a war of storefront and more a war of APIs and SDKs. And I think it puts more pressure on them to figure out how to get the headsets, other headsets that aren't their own, to be able to buy software from their store. And I know they've been pushing and wanting, or at least the reasons they've given has been wanting to kind of hold off for the Kronos Open XR, which is not the same as Steam's Open VR API. And Oculus was banking on that. And again, so they said that they were banking on that, but they now may not have the luxury of continuing to wait for that to be established. That's basically Open XR at this point is vaporware. I love the concept, but there's no sign that that's going to show up on our doorsteps next week, next month, or next year even. And Oculus may not be able to wait.
I agree. I think this puts a lot of pressure on Oculus, like you say, Steve. But so this really, all of this is good news that SteamVR is going to support this, because Oculus have said, a few people from Oculus, it might be Jason Rubin, I'm not 100% sure, but they were talking about how they always plan to support headsets, multiple headsets in the future, but they want to take care of their own headset, their own hardware for now, and then push this back. They've only got limited resources. Hopefully this will push them into supporting all of these different kinds of headsets. Oculus are not going to want to miss out on all of these sales, so I think it's important that they do this.
And I'll just want to be an additional layer of clarity. I like the approach Oculus has stated with the Open XR. I think that's a better approach than Valve's Open VR, if only the objectives of both of those are essentially the same, where you have multi-device compatibility, with the difference being that the Kronos group would control Open XR and not just Valve. Right now, Valve is in the driver's seat of Open VR. Microsoft may have some weight that they can carry in negotiating, because Microsoft is such a big company. But in general, Valve is driving that, and Valve is out there saying, well, we're an open platform, open this, open that. But it's really open in the name of the API. It's still a proprietary API that they control, and it serves their storefront. And I think it's just better if a industry conglomerate such as Kronos controls that instead of just one company.
Is anybody surprised at all by the fact that Valve actually made this partnership with Microsoft? Because in some ways, you can look at their situation and, well, Valve has always kind of had a contentious relationship with Microsoft and with Windows. They've kind of, I think they've all, in similar to Epic Games, Tim Sweeney, like some of the comments he's had about what Microsoft does in certain aspects. It seems like Valve, with the Valve box, like their PCs were running on Linux and all of that, almost like they wanted to figure out some way to get away from Windows, because they know that the way they make their money is by living on the back of this other entity that happens to be Windows, and they wanted to try to figure out a way out of that. Now here they are working on a deal with the devil. And I mean, I understand that the idea is they're going to have access to all these other headsets. There's going to be a lot of people that come in off of this, people that have been waiting. You're going to see some people out there that will make the argument that this is the best headset you can buy. Now, I know it sounds a little crazy, but hear me out here. Remember, the resolution is 1440 by 1440 or something like that, somewhere around that, right? So there is an increase in resolution. People have said that when you're looking at words, they're a lot sharper, they're a lot cleaner, menus and stuff like that. So you have that, and then the fact that there's no tracking nonsense that you have to deal with. I mean, you could potentially take these headsets into any given room. Microsoft has stated that they have 2 modes that these headsets can run. They have they talked about Windows mixed reality PCs and then Windows mixed reality Ultra PCs. Now, the regular version, just mixed reality PCs, consists of desktops and laptops with integrated graphics, and that it can run it at 60 frames per second when that is operating. And then if you have like a discrete graphics card, 970, 960 or whatever and up probably, then they can run at 90 frames per second. So some people are going to argue, hey, you can have a laptop, you can take these things to different rooms, you don't have to set up all kinds of stuff. You still have a cord, of course, and you have touch controllers. This puts pressure on HTC as well. We'll get to that in a second, but do you think anybody can make the argument that this is the best one of these headsets, whichever one maybe doesn't wiggle as much, is maybe the best SteamVR headset there is? Can anybody make an argument?
No. I think when you were talking about those requirements there, I think that's when you were using that kind of that room. I think they call it double dojo, whatever they call that Microsoft calls that house that you're in. Those requirements are for when you're using that. Now, if you want to hop in there and play something from Steam, I don't think you're going to be playing it on a laptop with integrated graphics. At least not some Alienware with a beefy internal GPU or something.
Yeah. I didn't mean that.
Okay.
I was, yeah, you're going to have to use the Ultra 90 frames, the legit discrete graphics card. But the nice advantage of integrated graphics and stuff like that is like, if you just want to show somebody the Rosen eye or like some type of Mayubi and stuff like that, you know, you'll be able to do that just off of a laptop. Kind of, it's just an easy, convenient way to do that.
Yeah, it's interesting as well when you talk about these two modes that they're going for here. Mixed Reality Ultra is the one that uses the discrete graphics card, as you said. And I'm just looking at the specs of these two modes here that they released, and it turns out that if you want to use Mixed Reality Ultra, you only need a 4th generation i5 CPU. So the actual CPU requirement for the higher mode, the 90 frames per second mode, is actually lower than the integrated graphics mode. Presumably, it's relying a little bit more on the CPU power than the graphics processing power on that. But I just thought that was interesting because on the integrated graphics, it requires a newer 7th generation Intel Core i5 or equivalent, and it has to have hyper-threading as well. So you know it's got to be I mean, presumably an i7, I would think, but with hyper-threading. But anyway, either way, it's interesting that they're differentiating these specs. But yeah, for this Ultra mode, in order to run the SteamVR games, you've got to have a dedicated presumably like a 970 graphics card. Actually, they've got it down here, the GTX 965M, so that'll be the laptop graphics card, or an AMD RX 460 is the minimum for the Ultra mode.
Yeah, so we'll have to see how that plays itself out, but we can take a little break from that. Let's talk a little bit about some of the content that was mentioned. And so they showed off a trailer which showed a mixture of games and experiences. There were 13 different things they showed. I can give a quick little rundown on some of this stuff they shown. Let's see here. They showed off Abduction, Dreams of Dolly, GoPro, Space Pirate Trainer, Super Hot VR, Luna, Skyworld, Move Studio, Hollow Tour, Galaxy Explorer, Free the Night, Minecraft, and Fantastic Contraption. They showed all of that in that trailer. Some of these were games like Space Pirate Trainer, Fantastic Contraption. We're very familiar with those. Some of the things we hadn't maybe seen quite yet. But maybe even more importantly, they showed an image of logos and companies that they're working with. And so these are studios, games, and experiences that are shown on this logo. I believe there is a total of 68 different companies, different games. You had games like Bullet Sorrow VR, Ancient Amuletter, Arizona Sunshine, Super Hot, you know, some of the stuff that we've already mentioned here. Dark Legion and a few other games. But the most interesting thing of all of it maybe was the fact that we saw a logo for Halo. And so there is this news now that we could possibly have a Halo VR experience in the near future. Now, will we get it this year? It's being shown with all this other stuff that is supposedly coming this year. Or is this a future long-term project that's somewhere down the line? Some people have said, hey, maybe this is only for HoloLens, and this is kind of a mistake. Let me kick it over to Steve. Steve, what do you think about Halo VR, and did you read any of the Halo news?
A little. I think those that saying it's for HoloLens is playing technicality. Like they're just covering their asses because this is not coming to HoloLens. Let's be real. HoloLens is this $3,000 thing for people to play with that work for companies, and it's purely in the dev space. There's nothing consumer about HoloLens, and Microsoft is not going to put their most beloved consumption franchise that is Halo and put it on that. So I think I'm going on record and scratching that. everything else, I think this opens it up for Xbox as well, and I know we've hammered on that in the past, so we don't need to necessarily take it there. But Halo, there hasn't been a Halo that was PC only in any way, at least none that I'm aware of. I'm not particularly a fan of the Halo franchise, but I think every one of them have been also available on Xbox. So I think that link is going to be there. We can read into that a little bit, but yeah, Halo in VR, that's gonna make up a lot of noise. Like,
do you think there's any possibility we'll actually see this year, or do you feel this is like a 2018?
My gut is 2018. I don't think we're going to see Halo this year. No.
Chris, what about you? Do you feel like Microsoft, obviously Halo as their property is something that could bring people to the Windows Store? Like, for example, myself, lots of people will probably sign up, make an account. If there's a Halo VR experience, and if I can play it, I'm going to want to sign up for that. So how valuable do you think a Halo VR experience could be to getting people to register an account at the Microsoft Store and go through the process of paying there and having a payment set up? And I mean, they want you in the walled garden, right?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like the killer app for Microsoft's mixed reality platform. I think it'd get all of us probably to make Microsoft accounts finally, even though I've been trying to not make a Microsoft account for so long.
Well, you have to have one with Windows 10 now, don't you?
You can skip it. It takes forever, though.
Oh.
It's ridiculous.
I have one. I don't use it for anything other than logging into my Windows 10, but sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, they always try to force it on people, but I think this would actually be a genuine way for them to get users on that platform. But this just kind of brings me to something I heard in a review of one of the Acer units that just kind of ruins all these announcements for me. And that's so far that these units don't have a microphone built in. So like if I got Halo, how am I going to talk to my friends? There's no microphone on these units. So I hope that changes for the consumer version. It probably will, like it really should. But
do we know if that's true with the Dell unit as well?
I don't think we know for sure, like for or against that, but I hope, like, that would totally ruin a unit if it didn't have a microphone, for me at least.
Yeah, because all of the big three now have microphones.
But none of them have integrated audio, so they could be saying, okay, just use a little PC headset with it, is what they could kind of be saying. One of the things that we're looking at too with this such a low cost headset combo that they're putting together. I mean, if you just wanted the base headset, there's one for $299.99, right? So somebody that has a wired Xbox 360 controller that they've used with their PC, they could buy this headset and conceivably they could be playing Battlezone or any game that you could play on SteamVR or possibly the Microsoft Store that would use a controller. You don't even need the controllers with it. You could be up and running as cheap as that. But before we leave Halo, I just wanted to kick it over to Gary. And Gary, it has been announced that 343 Industries is working on this Halo experience and that they're working on experiences in the plural. So there's going to be additional Halo, possibly HoloLens, Microsoft Mixed Reality, maybe for Xbox One X later when they eventually have a headset for that, or if these headsets just work with that. What do you think, like if you had to give your best guess on what 343 Industries might try to do with a Halo VR experience, how do you think they're going to approach it?
Best guess, I'd say that I think probably the best we can hope for is some kind of 3 or 4 hour sort of experience stroke game. You know, something along the lines that we've seen in Batman Arkham VR. I think that would be probably not the best we could hope for, but I think that's probably the most likely at this stage. But, you know, they could surprise us if they've been working with 343 Industries. I mean, presumably they're sort of busy at work on Halo 6 as well at the moment. So that it could be sort of a breakaway thing from that we don't know. But at the same time, you mentioned Xbox One X there, and if Microsoft have plans, and again, we don't know their plans for Xbox One X and VR at the moment. This is still all up in the air. But whether they want to bring VR to that system, as they've said before, then it could bode to Halo being something a little bit more significant, because that could really encourage people to both get the console, the more powerful console, and one of these VR headsets.
Of course, the downside of that idea is, it's way off in the distance if that's going to happen, because I think it's safe to assume at this point that if the Xbox One X does have a VR headset, like either a headset specifically tailored to it, or it works with all of these headsets, or maybe one of the headsets or what have you. If any of that does happen, probably November of next year would be the earliest that it would happen. So if Halo is going to wait for that, we're going to be waiting a while for Halo. Let's see here. What else did we want to cover?
Before we hop off of Halo, I think most people associate that with the first-person shooter that it is, but we shouldn't forget that the Halo Wars, the strategy game, that strategy works well for VR. So it could just be that. I mean, of course, we don't know, but just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah, one more.
Alex Kipman, his quote on it is, "It's my pleasure to let you know that we are working with 343 Industries to bring future Halo experiences into mixed reality. We are not providing specifics right now, but it is going to be a lot of fun to work with them." Like they don't own them. I mean, yeah, it's going to be fun to work with this other partner. But it sounds like there's going to be these multiple experiences. And one thing I'm hoping is that the foundation of the next Halo game that they're making, is it Halo 6 now? What are they on?
I think it is. Yeah, I'm pretty sure, because I don't really follow that franchise either, to be honest. But yeah,
but you would think that what they would just try to do is the engine that they're creating for Halo 6, like the first-person engine, build it in such a way that it translates to VR. So it's just like a smooth translation. Like, I'm hoping that would happen. And then, so if Halo 6 has a regular normal version that everybody gets, it'll have like an automatic VR version that would be within the range of like Doom 3 BFG or like Alien Isolation, where you just have to do a little bit of reworking and you get the experience mostly working right.
Yeah.
But
one more thing is, like, Microsoft always has said the Xbox One X will always, or the Xbox One and One S will always play Xbox One X games, and they're never going to cut anything out. Like, so if there's a VR headset to work with it, I feel like that would kind of upset a lot of people if it only worked for the X and then you'd leave out the older consoles, which you probably would have to do because they're so underpowered. So that,
well, you know what, actually, if you go back to the previous E3 where they showed off the Scorpio, they had a video. They had Todd Howard talking about Fallout 4 VR with Fallout playing in the background on the Xbox Scorpio, and it said like high-end VR, and they backed away from that. But back at that time, they said that the only exclusives would be VR, and that they're only exclusive just because the VR would only work with Scorpio. It wouldn't work with the lower end setup. So I don't think that that's necessarily a problem for them. I think they would still go down that road. One other thing I did want to mention, though, so we see this giant wall of companies that are working with Microsoft, all these different games that are going to be coming this year, like Ancient Amuletter, Bullet Sorrow VR, Arizona Sunshine, Super Hot, all these games that are coming, Fantastic Contraption, games we're very familiar with. One of my predictions was back on E3 when we found out about Super Lucky's Tale. I thought for sure that when they did this deal with Playful, that Super Lucky's Tale, although it would have a 2D version for the Xbox, I thought for sure they were going to have a special version for the Windows Store that works with these headsets. Now, having said all of that, Alex Kipman has said that more things are going to be revealed at this show in Berlin and also in the coming weeks as well. Let's kick it over. Well, actually, Chris, why don't you comment on it? What do you think about Super Lucky's Tale? Do you think we'll still get an announcement before in the next couple weeks, maybe?
I think we have to, just because it translates so easily to VR, and vice versa. Like, if you just have to replace the camera with a VR camera, and I'm sure Playful has expertise in doing that. So I would expect it has to happen, but it's really interesting they haven't announced anything about it just yet. So
there couldn't be any kind of because obviously we know that Lucky's Tale was an Oculus game, an Oculus exclusive that was launched with the Rift. There couldn't be some kind of exclusivity on VR functionality in that game that would mean it has to stay on the Oculus for a period
Ooh, that's
of time.
interesting idea, Gary. Never thought about that. That could be a possibility.
I don't know if that exists, but
yeah. I don't know if it does either. That is very interesting, like you say. But I read more into Lucky's Tale as Microsoft and the Xbox team scrambling for their Mario. They were missing a lot of exclusives just in general for that Scorpio reveal, the Xbox One X reveal itself in the most recent E3. And I always looked at Super Lucky's Tale as just a platformer, a cute cartoony platformer that they were able to go out and get a deal with. So, but no, you raise a good point. So hopefully that's not the case, because I do want to play Super Lucky's Tale in VR. I won't touch it outside of VR.
Alrighty. So one other topic we should probably broach before we get out of here is, what about HTC? Because, man, you got to feel for this company, because at every juncture, some bad news freaking smacks them across the face. I mean, first they got the big Oculus sale, $399. They had to deal with that. They finally dealt with that by lowering it down to $599 and getting it within range. Now they find out that this December, if somebody just wants to play SteamVR games, if they want to play the lab and if they want to play Robo Recall, well, not Robo Recall, but like raw data and stuff like that. If they want to play those games, they can buy one of these headsets, and these headsets have controllers that kind of melt into your hands, similar to the Oculus Touch, not a goofy wand that's kind of flopping around. Obviously, tracking concerns are a concern. The headset wiggling around is a concern. Gary, why don't I kick it over to you? Do you think, I mean, Microsoft is acting like these headsets are gamer headsets. They have a picture. They have the Arizona Sunshine logo. Are people going to be playing real deal games with these Microsoft headsets? Are they going to be moving their head around? Is it going to work? Is it going to fall apart? What do you think?
Yeah, I don't see why it wouldn't really. But you're right that they're being sort of more towards the gaming side of things with these latest announcements that we're hearing. Because before, I was sort of under the impression, with it working on integrated graphics, from what I heard before, that it was mainly aimed at more productivity kind of applications, really. But with this, they're really branching out and showing that these are gaming platforms as well. And you're right in terms of HTC, that they're not the only SteamVR headset anymore, or at least not the one that most people know. And it's going to flood, they must have been expecting this. You can only assume that they've been expecting this for a long time. They knew that they've been licensing this technology from Valve, and Valve have always wanted numerous headsets on the market. So this has got to be expected from HTC, but I'm sure they were hoping it wouldn't be quite so soon. But yeah, I think it's good for Valve either way. But HTC, they're suffering again.
Steve, when you think about HTC and the position they're in, and well, just actually think about the overall marketplace. We have the Oculus Rift. Someone can buy an Oculus Rift right now for $399.99, and they can play everything on the Oculus Store. They can play everything on Steam. We don't know if they'll be able to play stuff on the Windows Store. There was no announcement made about if other headsets can be on the Windows Store. So there's that. Then you go to HTC. Okay, somebody could buy an HTC Vive. They get the lighthouses. They have room scale, but they're paying $599. And now you have this third option where somebody can get this mixed reality headset. They're untethered. No tracking necessary. Will it work great? We don't know, but the controllers are better than the HTC Vive controllers if you really think about it. So what would you like if somebody wanted to know what headset do I buy? Does this change the equation at all?
A little bit. I think HTC will lose some sales to these things, to these Microsoft units, but I don't think it's the sword hit to the Achilles heel just yet, for two big reasons. One, the tracking. It's going to be reasonably known that the Vive will have superior tracking, although you'll have to mount stuff to the wall. So now you're going to have a whole group of fanboys that say, oh, you get a Vive, you have to mount crap to your walls, which is kind of counter to the way the world is now. But I think the bigger thing against these, at least the two Microsoft units that we know more about, is the screen technology itself. These are both LCD units that aren't gonna, when you pan your head, may not update as fast as what we have, and I think that's going to play a factor. I think the gaming will, I maybe I'm talking now to my what, because I have not tried a Microsoft holographic headset yet, but it's from what I've read, it's not something I'd trade my Vive for. It's not something that I think is going to really help with. I hope my daughter is joining. Sorry, everyone. My daughter just walked into the room if you're listening on the audio podcast. So I'm a little distracted now. I'm not sure that really it's going to change too much, because you can get an Oculus right now for $399, and they lost some of the sales. And like you said, you can play Steam stuff with them. But at the same time, it's going to, for anyone that's anti-Facebook, it may come into play there, because a lot of people I'm not going to buy into an Oculus because, well, I'm anti-Facebook, I'm anti all of that. But anyways, I'm going to turn it over because I'm being distracted. Sorry.
Well, think about this, though. Most people who are anti-Facebook are anti-Microsoft for the same reason. The data collection, like Windows 10 just steals all your data. So I think that doesn't really, I agree, and to some extent, there's some people who really just hate Facebook, but I think the same people that hate Facebook hate Microsoft still. So I don't know. HTC might still be ahead in that regard.
One thing that it's going to do, hopefully, is this should put pressure on HTC to bring out a new controller. If it's not going to be the Knuckles, it's got to be something else, because the Microsoft controller is basically a copy of the Touch for the most part, and it also integrates some of the Vive stuff as well. So it's a better controller. I think we can agree with that. Now the tracking, I don't know that we're maybe selling the tracking short a little bit, just from the standpoint that when it does go out of your vision, out of the camera's vision, they're going to have an algorithm that is based on how tall you are, where your shoulder blade would be, where your elbow would likely be, and it's all going to be guesswork. It's not going to be perfect. But I think the tracking, I don't think we're going to PSVR tracking with this. I think this is going to be better than PSVR, actually. And I think it might be just good enough that the average Joe Blow out there is not going to really notice that big of a difference. So this becomes a major headset. These multiple headsets, they become a major factor. And I really think this is a great disruption that's coming into our industry. I love this. This is exciting to me, because what this does is it forces Oculus, it forces HTC, it forces everybody to reevaluate everything and be like, okay, things are going to get a little bit crazy, especially if Microsoft can bring out a big gun like Halo. And we don't know for sure that there is not some Halo thing that is farther along than we've ever known. Remember, Microsoft had to go to Dell, Acer, Lenovo, all these companies, and convince them, you guys build the hardware, we'll build the ecosystem, and it'll all work out. they might have told these companies, hey, guess what, guys? We got Halo. So your hardware will move. So be ready. So maybe Halo's coming sooner than we might even guess. Maybe it's real early 2018. So I think that's really exciting. Basically, any other things you guys want to bring up before we get out of here?
Maybe one last thing about, I don't know, when I thought about this, I thought it would be working with the Oculus store, because Microsoft and Oculus have always had this kind of good partnership, like all the way back. Microsoft added some optimizations in their operating system for like the dev kits and stuff, and then they bundled the Xbox One controller. So this is just like a shakeup in my head. Like if I assumed one thing, it would be maybe that it would work on the Oculus store and not Steam, because Microsoft seemed to not like Steam. So it's weird. It's a weird. Yeah,
there's no loyalty anywhere, is there?
No.
Strange bedfellows for sure. And we still don't know. We don't know as Vive and Rift owners if we're going, like, let's say there was some type of Halo thing that was this Christmas. I know it's unlikely, but let's just pretend there's a little 2 to 3 hour Halo experience this Christmas on the Windows Store exclusive. Will Vive and Rift owners be able to get that? We don't know yet. As far as I know, we haven't heard yet.
No, there was something, because I was looking into this earlier today, and apparently that originally I thought that they said a long time ago that they were going to allow Rift and Vive to work with Windows Mixed Reality and presumably, the Windows Store. But apparently since then, I think probably a couple of months ago, they have said that they're not supporting it directly, but there might be workarounds in order to get the Rift and the Vive to work in some way with mixed reality. We don't know. We'll have to wait and see, because there's still a lot to be announced with these things.
And then we also, with that same or similar frame of mind, we have to start talking about if these Microsoft units are supporting OpenVR, what can a Mr. Cross VR accomplish in terms of playing Oculus software via a I guess you wouldn't call it Revive at that point, wouldn't make much sense, but doing the same thing, because the core layers are going to be there. All is needed is the translation. And I know I'm overly simplifying it. It's not as simple as go in and click a few checkboxes, but my point is that a lot of that work is already done in the existing Revive, and maybe a few more translations, and it's not inconceivable that you'll be able to play some Oculus software on one of these Microsoft headsets.
Yeah, there was some report, something that I read earlier today as well, just on that subject, and they did say it should be possible to use these Windows Mixed Reality headsets with Revive to access Oculus games.
Right. I mean, you can even use SteamVR to access Revive on your Rift to play Rift games. So like any headset that works with SteamVR should work with Revive as it stands currently. So I would think it would be pretty easy to assume that.
I guess he's got to change it to ReMR. Does that sound right?
Yeah.
ReMR.
Yeah. There you go. You got to send him an email.
Well, I tell you what, I mean, in a couple of weeks, or a couple of months, we're going to find out a lot more about this. And it's going to be exciting, because I really feel like it will stir the pot and force everybody to step it up a little bit. And then we might see some other headsets next year as well, some wireless built in, all these kinds of things. So this VR industry, man, just when you think it kind of is leveling out a little bit, it kicks into gear again, and who knows what's going to happen. So basically, that's going to go ahead and do it for this special bonus episode. We're calling it episode 50.5. Once again, if you guys can subscribe to our YouTube channel, if you can go ahead and like the video, leave a comment. And of course, we're on iTunes for all the podcast listeners out there. We're on Stitcher Radio, Google Play, a bunch of them. So probably any one that you're using, we're available. And if you have an opportunity to leave a review for us on one of those programs, that would be great as well. And that's pretty much going to do it. Any last words for anybody, or anything else I'm forgetting?
Nope.
All right. So we'll see you guys at the normal time next week. This is just an extra bonus episode. So we'll still see you guys next week, and take it easy.
Have a good one.
Bye.
Bye.